When I first started Durable, I was just an employee, and I was actually told there were not going to be any more partners. And in my mind, I was thinking, well, that's an impossibility because basically, if you become so good, you can never let that guy leave.
What are the things you would advise someone to consider before expanding their company?
First one is the person has to have the drive to do it. You have to have a relentless work ethic.
Where do you see us lagging nowadays? Because we can't achieve the same quality of work and we don't see those kind of historic cultures or buildings nowadays.
It originates in basically a lack of drive and determination to do the best work. Your architects, your engineers, people are wanting to get from A to Z in 2 seconds rather than going, well, I want to learn the process.
How do you recognize at the level you are right now, the people you meet in your life?
In general, is the person a little disheveled? Is their car a little messy? Do they have things going on in their life all the time? They've got, oh my gosh, this happened. Oh my gosh, that happened.
I have never seen you going off track anywhere. How do you ensure that you are always on the right path?
One of the main things I do is I try and do what's best for everybody. I don't look at it as to what do I gain out of this personally. It's like a person really should try and help everybody around them.
Have you ever felt anxious in your life?
All the time, something happens and, you're anxious about the outcome or whatnot.
One money management lesson that you have learned so far that you would like to share or pass it over to the next generation of roofers?
Company or a person, they'll spend everything they have. And usually they'll spend that plus more because they'll take out a credit line, they'll get credit cards, and all of a sudden they're $5,000, $10,000. They're in debt. And now you can't actually really focus on your business.
Trump is here and people are talking about like they are anxious about it. Some people, particularly in the construction industry, they are all positive about that. How do you see that the future of roofing industry or construction industry is going to be in this era of Trump?
I don't actually know. And it's not just the roofing industry, but a lot of the trades, your farming industry depends on a lot of these types of people that are here illegally.
If Trump asks all of them to leave the country, people will have shortage of these masons and the industry would collapse.
Absolutely. I mean, you can't fault a person for wanting to better their life. If they came here illegally, our border patrol failed in allowing them across. But if they're already here and they're working, oh my gosh, we should do something to support them.
Welcome to the Roofing Millionaires podcast, the only roofing podcast where we don't promote anyone and we don't sell you anything. In this episode, we are sitting down with John Chan from the Durable Slate group, and he shares how he built his massive roofing empire that led him to win the Gold Circle Award 3 times and the IFD Award as well. We have also talked about ethics, money management, how to build a great culture in your roofing business, and how you can build a great roofing business even with the change in the power dynamics of the world. Do like and subscribe our channel if you want us to bring more roofing experts like this on the show that can help you grow your roofing business. Let's dive in. Welcome to the Roofing Millionaires show, John. How are you today? What's going on in your mind right now?
Just busy as usual. I got back from Edinburgh on Sunday night, and I've just been trying to get caught up with everything.
Okay. John, I was excited about this episode particularly because you were the one I had in my mind that I would have you on my show even before I had this idea of starting podcast, because I personally believe that you have so much to share because you have achieved so many things in your life. That's why today I feel that many people can take inspiration from our conversation and your journey. So we'll talk about your journey in roofing and how others can take inspiration from that. We'll also talk about money management, ethics, how to build a strong cultures and systems for your roofing company when you are starting out from scratch. And then we'll discuss technology, obviously traveling, because I know you love that, and how someone can achieve true success by aligning the trinity of mind, body, and soul. So let's just begin with your journey first, because as far as I know, you are the owner of the durable group of companies that includes the durable Slate company, and the durable restoration company. Plus, you have also been the president of NSA, and as far as I know, you started this company in 1986 during your bachelor's in economics. So I would like to ask you, what made you pursue this blue collar profession instead of being an economist?
Well, it was actually a summer job for me. I was going to school at UCLA, and I'd come home to Columbus, and I was just being a laborer, doing cutting slate, hauling slate, things like that, tearing slate off. And when I finished school, I thought, wow, this is actually a pretty interesting job. And I didn't actually like a lot of my interviews after I finished school. I was mainly interviewing in the investment and investment banking market, Merrill Lynch, First Boston, Drexel, companies like that. And I just kind of felt like a hidden politics in all of those companies. And I just felt like, Durable's a very small company. And if I just go back, I can do really well there. Durable can do really well. And I'll eventually become one of the partners, which I did.
Okay. So you didn't start this company, right?
No, it was started by a guy named Steve May. When I first started Durable, I was just an employee, and I was actually told there were not going to be any more partners. And in my mind, I was thinking, well, that's an impossibility, because basically, if you become so good, you can never let that guy leave, because if you ever let them leave, they would be your worst competition. So I got to the point where I was offered partnership, and there's actually 3 partners.
And did you face any pushback from family or peers that you are making a bad call by going into roofing?
Well, yeah, actually, my parents didn't like it, even though, I was going into business with my brother. And most of my friends thought I was crazy, that, you've got opportunities for nice, cushy jobs, white-collar jobs in finance, instead of going into a very dirty business, because at that time you do a lot of slate tear-offs, and you get back home and you're all black. Yeah, so it was a very different path, I should say.
Okay, and what was the source of this confidence and energy that just made you pursue and go against all of them?
Well, like I said, there's 2 things. Number one is that I didn't feel like I liked the office politics and the trend of working at a First Boston or a Merrill Lynch or a company like that. And that I actually really enjoyed the restoration type work we were doing. It's just that we're so small. But I knew that if I put my best foot forward and help create something bigger, that I would be actually a partner and involved in it.
Okay, and you opened your first branch in Cincinnati in 1996, and then you opened your second branch in New Orleans in 2006. That's almost a decade, from 1996 to 2006. So what was the thing that made you realize that now is the right time to expand and to have another location?
Well, we were doing so much work in Cincinnati, because it's only about an hour and a half from Columbus, that it warranted having an office there, because having an office there would allow us to serve more customers and bring down our pricing. And also, it was really hard on our staff to keep traveling back and forth like that. At that time, that was our thoughts.
Okay. Let's say someone is watching or listening to this show and wants to have another location in their roofing business as well. And as far as I have seen, when we try to expand, most people, they just collapse instead of growing their business. If you would agree with me on that, maybe because of they have done improper research, or maybe they aren't ready to take the shift. What are the things you would advise someone to consider before expanding their company?
Well, I've opened several offices, so
Uh,
I have a really good idea on what that is. The first one is the person has to have the drive to do it. You have to have a relentless work ethic. I worked, gosh, 6, 7 days a week when opening those offices. And it was doing everything, hiring, going out and selling the jobs, going out and collecting the money, going out and making sure all the crews were doing the jobs the right way, training the crews, going to various functions, whether it be like the Rotary Club or, whatever it is, and making a pitch. And once you kind of do that, and you start to have employees, you've got to be able to identify who can do what. And once you identify, like, okay, this guy can sell. He's never sold before, but all I've got to do is train him up on good communication skills, good leadership skills, good skills on how to work his time. And then you just basically train them up. Okay, there's your salesman. Okay, you find a guy that really understands the field, and you say, okay, this guy's can be my production manager. You take that guy and you train them up on how to schedule jobs, how to talk to customers. A lot of what you do is communication. If you can communicate and get that person to understand exactly how everything's going to go and why it's going to go that way. And also you have to think about what I call exchange. You want to make sure that you give more than you actually receive. And if you kind of instill that in your personnel so that every product that's delivered is a little bit better than what's asked for, you get your stats going up, your statistics just go way, way up. So you just grab one person that you see that can do something, maybe like your salesman, he's a horrible roofer, but he's got good communication skills and he's got the potential, and you train them up to be a great salesman. Maybe your production manager, they could never sell, but they can manage guys. You just have to identify who can do what and put them in those positions, train them up, and let them run with it. A lot of times where people make mistakes is the guy that you're training is going to make all kinds of mistakes. And here's where you got to just kind of step back. He's going to make mistakes. You've got to nurture them and say, okay, well, great, this didn't go so well. So here's what we're going to do next time. And instead, a lot of people will jump down somebody's throat. Oh my God, you're so stupid. Oh, my guys can't do anything. So what happens there is that guy starts to feel very invalidated and he can't do anything. His products suck and you've caused him to do that. So if you grant him the space and allow him to make those mistakes and learn from those mistakes and show them that they are and can be great, they become great for you. And, that's one of the things I say about, I get so many compliments about our work. And I said, we just have a great team. It's not like a person that does all of this. We have a great team. We have great sheet metal guys. We got great slaters. We got great tile guys. We got guys that are fabulous behind the scenes. When we won that international award for our steeple project in Iowa, everybody was oohing and awing about the beautiful sheet metal work. But you know what? It started off with the estimator. The estimator looked at it and saw the steeple that they wanted to restore, but it was wood. And our estimator said, well, why would you want to do that? Who's going to paint it? You're going to have the same problem. Why don't we do it in copper? And boom, the estimator closed them on the copper. Okay, so now it's in Iowa, so they get rough winters. It's got to be done in an exact certain amount of time. So next is the person in our production department that schedules the job. It can't take longer than 8 months. Otherwise, you're going to be paying hundreds of thousands of dollars on scaffold that's just going to sit there. So then you've got to plan it out. You've got to get a crane up there, remove every single piece that you'll need, fabricate it so that when you erect the scaffold at the end of winter, you can hop on it in the summertime and be done in exactly 8 months so the scaffolding can come down. And if any piece of that falls through, you've lost hundreds of thousands of dollars. So the scheduling and making sure that every single piece of the job goes just correct. So that person behind the scenes, nobody knows who that person is, but they're probably the most important person on that entire job. But everybody just only sees the shiny copper. They're like, oh my gosh. So there's a lot of people on the team that make all of these jobs go. And you've got to validate all of your guys that do all that amazing work. You know, most of the guys, or a lot of the people, know some of our top guys and go, oh my gosh, that guy's the best. You know, oh, they're amazing. But the behind the scenes guys that really make a lot of the amazing things happen, they're kind of unsung heroes, but they're part of that great durable team. Like I said, if that salesman hadn't have made that call, that job would have never happened, you know? So a lot of it is the salesman's got to be able to make that go how it needs to go. And then, like I said, the production person's got to be able to make sure that that thing goes like clockwork. You know, if you look at our Norwegian embassy project, you know, it had a penalty clause, $5,000 a day, $5,000 every single day. So when it actually came down to it, at the end of the day, when they put everything together, we were the only valid bid. And I had to hold their feet.
Because no one would have dared to, you know, apply onto that, because $5,000 a day is a big hit.
Sure, you're behind 30 days. That's $150,000.
Yes.
You know, you've lost all your profit. It goes another week, you're losing money. You know, so it's a big thing to be able to schedule everything just right. And that particular job, you know, I said, it's a funny job because it's kind of like an elephant trying to change his shoes in a shoebox. And then it's also right across the street from the Naval Observatory, which is where the vice president lives. So when you're on site, your phone doesn't work. You've got to walk about 2 blocks away to actually call. So if there's anything going wrong on the job site, you can't really call the office. You've got to get off the job site. And so there, in every job, you've got to look at it and say, okay, what are all of the possible things that could go wrong with it? Okay, what are all the solutions to these potential problems? And when you tie it all in, you got to say, okay, is this job doable in this fashion? And so, like I said, you know, there's a lot of people behind the scenes that do incredible work that nobody knows. And in any business, when you start, you just basically take your guys and say, okay, well, this guy can be a great blah. And then you put them there and you train them and you let them make their mistakes and you cheer them on. You're their best cheerleader, right? And that's really how you get your better people.
Okay. What I have summarized from this is that you are saying that if you have to expand, you will have to have a great sales team, and then you need a great production department as well. Plus, you have to think like a coach and you have to train your people. But on the game day, like a coach never goes onto the field, but he trains all the players. That's what you are saying. You have to train them in a great way that they can fight the battle on their own.
Right. So, yeah, you know, your training division, they've got to train everybody up so that they're they're fabulous. And that's what I think probably sets us apart. We have our own in-house course room. We've written up courses on, how to do a slate repair, how to flash a chimney, how to, all these different things. And then we have mock-ups in the back. So we have a roof that has like a chimney, a valley, a soil pipe. We've got brick walls, and we let them do all their training on the ground. So they're not, 50 feet up in the air going, okay, I got to learn how to flash this chimney. So if they've learned it all on the ground and they've got it down on the ground, well, by the time they get up 50 feet up in the air, it's kids' work. It's like, oh, that's pretty easy. But you've got to invest in your guys when it's raining or snowing or temperatures are too cold or too hot. Bring them in, start training them up. Make sure that they've got everything down. That's what we do. I mean, we have a pretty unique model. That's why I think that in the roofing business, there's a lot of different models you can use. Ours works for us. I mean, you've got an insurance model that's very different. You've got a model where basically you subcontract everything, and that's different. So ours isn't the only workable model, but there's different avenues you can go down, and this is just one of them.
How did you pick that this is the right model for your company? Is there any process or anything, any test that someone can do to actually figure out that this is the process they should be working on to build a company?
Well, we use something called the Hubbard Management System, and basically it breaks the organization down into 7 divisions, and we work off that model. So the 7th division is your executive division, and basically it makes everything legal. So, you've got all your licenses, all your permits. You've got your safety director who's, he's got every certification. Like our safety director, he's a train the trainer in, gosh, you name it. I mean, any piece of equipment, scaffold, he did the scaffold training at the Scaffold Institute. So he can certify people in scaffold, so basically our 7th division keeps all the legal rudiments in. And then in Division 1, we call that our communications division. It's where the estimate calls come in. And it's where we do our hiring. So, we try and hire all the best guys that we can. And then in Division 2, we do all the sales, all the marketing and sales. And they're a really good, tight-knit group in our main office. They all share like one big office together. And they all cheer each other on, And then in Division 3, that's where the contract goes once it's sold. That's our treasury department. So they look at it and they analyze it and they make sure that can be done at that price. They order all the materials and get everything all set to go for production. Production schedules it, and then they organize everything so that it can be done right away. So let's say there's copper valleys. Well, the first part of the production department takes the copper off the shelf, fabricates, 44 feet of valley or whatever it is, sets it aside. And then this box is Mr. Smith's materials. It's got the valleys, the slate, the underlayment, whatever's needed for that job, so that when the production guys come, they take everything from that job, they go over it, make sure that they've got all the equipment, all the materials, know exactly everything about the job, and they go and do the job. And our 5th division is our quality control division. And what they do is they inspect every single job. The inspector actually tries to flunk a job. And they also do all of our company training. So they'll train them in our course room and in the back where we have the mock roofs. And they'll also check the jobs, certify the jobs. If there's anything wrong, they'll take the person who made the mistake, goes back out there, says, hey, what happened here? They fix it, and they make sure that the person understands anything that they missed so that they don't ever make that mistake again. And then our 6th division is our PR division, and basically it publicizes our works that are good and makes them well known. So the idea is that after that happens, it goes back to Division 1 because now you've got more estimate calls. And the idea is that you make that thing spin like a top as fast as possible. So estimate call, sold, production, gets the materials, production's done, quality control inspects it, passes it, and then it's publicized that it's done. So it just keeps going on and on and on as quick as possible.
That sounds that's interesting. And I love the fact that you're actually making sure that the mistake doesn't happen again. How do you make sure that, like you said, that the person goes to that person who has done something fishy or made any error? Then how do you make sure that, okay, this thing never happens again?
Well, in that training process, so let's say,
Yes.
so they fix it and then they go, so is there any word you didn't understand in there? And they clear up any kind of words or confusions or whatnot. And then you're assuming that at that point the person has it. Sometimes what you have, unfortunately, is there are some people that they cut corners.
Yes.
They just want to get something done as fast as possible. And when you see somebody that's repetitive and doesn't do the work that's required of them, basically they're taken back to Division 1, which handles personnel, and then they're given a program to either fix them or they're let go. So that way you don't have these types of employees that do half-assed work that stay with you. They're gone. That's kind of an interesting thing because, we've actually let go of a lot of really, really good roofers. There's some guys that are ex-durable guys they're amazing, but they're not reliable. One day they're going to do beautiful work. The next day, they're going to half-ass something and it might look good, but it's going to leak. And we just can't have that. So those guys, they're all gone.
And how do you lay them off?
You just fire them because you've had documentation on how they've time and time again tried to shortchange the customer. So once it's documented, you have a legal leg to stand on to let them go.
Speaking of quality, John, this is my personal opinion that buildings nowadays don't even last a century. And back in time, if we see, we have such amazing landmarks. And even with all this research and technology that we have, we aren't able to achieve that kind of craftsmanship. That's what I believe. And I have been in touch with you for last year. And I see all of your projects on Facebook and you are doing some amazing projects out there. And you have worked on many of historic projects as well. So that raises a question in me, and I feel that you are the perfect person to answer that. Where do you see us lagging nowadays? Because we can't achieve the same quality of work and we don't see those kind of historic sculptures or buildings nowadays, and that quality too.
Well, it originates in basically a lack of drive and determination to do the best work. So your architects, your engineers, your builders, your contractors, there's a big difference in society today. If you look back at an 8th grader's schoolwork in 1920 versus an 8th grader schoolwork today, it's vastly different. There's too much giving in to, that poor person or, whatever. Basically,
the victim personality.
Exactly. So all you've got to do is basically train people up well. And when you've got those kinds of victim personality people, you just get rid of them. You get rid of all the troublemakers. And you make sure that the people produce. So much of society today allows for all this to go on. And it's in every profession. So if you think about it's ridiculous because the architects of 50 years ago, they knew a lot more. They understood a lot more. And you can say that about the contractors too. The roofers of yesteryear compared to the roofers of today, it's just a vast difference. I think that we've become a society so much that we've looked at all the glitz and glamour, and everybody wants to get to the glitz and glamour before they do the actual work that gets there. I get so many questions like, well, I'd like to do jobs like durable. It's like, I want to get there like, next year or later this year. And it's like, well, you don't understand what it took to build. You understand the different trials and errors and all the different places I've been and the different job sites I've been on and in all different climates. A roof behaves one way in Florida, a different way in DC, and a different way in Minnesota. In Minnesota, you may have 10 feet of snow on your roof. In Florida, you might have 120-mile-an-hour winds. If you're in New Orleans, you have flying termites. So, you've got to have witnessed and understood all the different aspects of roofing and why things work the way they do, and, that was one of my indoctrinations, because at Durable, one of my first jobs was I was a tear-off guy that tear off all these slate roofs. And when you tear them off, you see how they were put together and what went wrong.
Yes.
And most of these roofs were old. They were anywhere from 50 to 100 or more years old. And you get to see what's happened during that time. And you also got to see what's happened with installation methods. You also get to see what's happened with material. So much is driven by profit that a lot of things are left out because of profit. So your materials gets not quite so good. Your tooling, it's like, really, to be a great sheet metal guy, you can't just rely on tools from the U.S. You have to get European tools because they're not made here. And so there's just a lot of different things that change through time, and they usually change through profit, and corners are cut to make profit. And when that happens, well, the product gets a little bit less and a little bit less. And so, that was a really roundabout way of answering your question of, why buildings used to last so long and why they don't anymore. When I was in Istanbul, I went to the Sophia. It's a mosque.
I saw your pictures. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was built in 532.
Yes.
So here it is. It's 532. Not only is it still standing, but it's an amazing structure. So, you look at something like that, and something like that isn't built today,
Yes.
Or in the same city, you go down underneath the city, and the Romans built this aquifer. And basically, they figured a way out to dig up the ground and get fresh water that they could use. They did this, gosh, I want to say it was about 2,000 years ago. And over time, they've built an entire city on top of this aquifer. The aquifer still works. And they didn't even know it was down there until they stumbled upon it digging. And this aquifer still supports the whole city. So all these big columns are holding up buildings above them, and it's still working. And so people did things for product and for livelihood and for survival back in the day. And I think that so many things have shifted to profit that it's really hurt society. And people are wanting to get from A to Z in 2 seconds rather than going, well, I want to learn the process. There's a whole process. Instead, they just want the fruits of everything right now. And it's just the society that we live in. Sorry if I
I
went on a
actually
rant.
agree with you. I'm an electrical engineer as well, and I have worked with a construction company back in the years. And I felt that now the owners operate on this model that we have to reduce the cost. And this is their base model that they have to work upon. Whereas 100 years back or even 1,000 years back, people were making something that can be remembered centuries after them. They wanted to leave a legacy. Okay. For those who don't know, actually, you are among the few American companies that have won the IFD award as well. And you have won the Gold Circle Award 3 times. Such a big achievement for a company, because I saw your interview and you mentioned that people even consider it an achievement of being a finalist in the Gold Circle Award, but you have won it 3 times. So I want to ask you, did you ever see yourself winning all these awards, or is it something that just happened along the way?
Well, that's a good question. Nobody's ever asked that question before. We didn't actually go out to win the awards. What happened was, this was in 1996. Gary Howes and I went over to Germany to, at that time, it was called the Dachenbahn, Roof and Wall Show. Now it's called the Dachenholz, which is Roof, Wall, and Timber Show. And at that conference, there was a young roofer, and we saw the quality of the young roofers that were being trained in Europe. And we saw the magnificent church steeples and houses, these slate roofs, these tile roofs, these copper roofs that were just unbelievable. And we decided that we've got to get there, that the United States, the roofing that gets done here is like just not on par. And at that conference, we're like, we've really got a ways to go to become world class. And, we want to be world class. We don't want to just put a roof on. We want to just, be like these guys. And so when we were there, we actually went to, there's a company called Bocker, Bocker. It looks like Bocker, but it's like Booker. And they make these incredible lifts. And the one that we bought goes, I think it's 38 feet up in the air. And it'll basically take 660 pounds up and down. And we're just like, wow, that's a fantastic piece of machinery. And we just saw one after another. So there's 2 different companies. One's called Poss and one's called Booker. And we have one of each. And at that show, we bit the bullet and we bought this machine, and we came back and we started doing some very difficult projects on, 4 or 5 story buildings that you really couldn't do efficiently without one of these machines. And we're like, wow, this is great. And so we're like, what other kind of tools do they have? And so at that time, we started learning about some of the different types of metal roofs that are done. And over here in the U.S., everybody is either caulking or soldering. And it works. At least soldering does. Caulking is pretty temporary. But the problem of it is if you look at that job that I just posted, Logan County Courthouse in Lincoln, Illinois,
Yeah.
you have these big clocks. They're about 13 feet wide. And the county had the same problem every time they replaced the roof. The clocks would leak because when you solder around a 13-foot diameter clock, when you solder it, well, it holds everything exactly right there. Well, when it gets hot and it gets cold, you have to think about the expansion rate of copper. That copper is going to move. And every time it moves, it tears the solder joint. And if you solder it super, super well, where it's stronger than the copper will tear because the expansion coefficient, it's stronger than the copper. So what we did on those is we put in pleated valleys. These pleated valleys is kind of like an accordion. It gets hot, it expands. It gets cold, it shrinks. And it just goes. And when you double lock those into the rest of the copper roof, well, that copper roof it'll last for over a century. And these are some of the techniques that have been used in Europe for hundreds of years, but somehow got lost in translation over here. And if you look at some of the super old roofs in the U.S., every once in a while you'll see something like that, but it's pretty rare. Most everything over here is riveted and soldered, or locked and soldered, or caulked, or something like that. And in those kinds of instances, like around those clocks, it'll tear every single time. It can't work. It can't work because the copper can't move. And so that was one of the things that we saw over there in 1996. And we're like, that's why some of these roofs, especially on these government buildings, they fail every 5 or 10 years. And they just go up there and they seal them again, they seal them again, they seal them again. So that's one of the things that we've gotten really well known for, is fixing problematic roofs that can't be fixed. I mean, I don't know how many times I've gotten a call like, well, we've got this situation and it's basically, I've been told it's impossible. And, I think you're the guys. And I always ask, where they heard our name. And he goes, well, ironically enough, from your competition. I called one roofer and, once he saw the blueprints, he goes, oh, this is kind of like a durable job. It's like, he goes, what's a durable job? He goes, well, there's a company called Durable Slate. You probably want to call them because that's way too complicated for any regular roofer. And so he called another local roofer, and he said the guy was all excited. And then he saw the blueprints. He's just like, we can't do this job. This is like a durable job. He says, I had to look you guys up on the internet, and that's how I found you. So through this process, we've gotten to be known for doing very difficult historic roofs, because sometimes it's more than just the roof sometimes. So, we just did these twin steeples up in Montana that had these clay tile roofs. Well, there's a lot more to the situation. There's a lot more. There's all kinds of things wrong. So number one is we had to figure out how to scaffold it, because we couldn't build off the church because you couldn't put that much weight on the church. So what we did was we made drawings to put I-beams through the steeple. And then we had to find an engineer that would basically stamp it and say it could be done this way. And that took a little while, because certain engineers were looking at us like, that can't be done. It can be done. You just have to figure out all the weight loads and distribute it so it can be done. Yes. And so we went to different engineers and different scaffold companies, and we finally found an engineer and finally found the scaffold company that said, yes, it can be done this way, and you have to distribute the weight this way. And so what we did on those steeples is we built scaffold off the ground up. So all of the weight on the bottom was going straight to the ground. And then we put I-beams, steel I-beams through in two directions, and we tied it in to the structure of the steeple itself. And then we built scaffold off those I-beams the rest of the way. So half of the weight was on the steeple and half of the weight went straight to the ground, because neither the steeple nor the ground could support everything. Because if you take it to the ground, you could only do it on 2.5 sides. You couldn't use the other 1.5 sides because that's where the church was. And so figuring out solutions like that, and then also seeing what was happening with their masonry. A lot of their problems were also in the masonry. So what we did was patch the broken stones. We tuck pointed it. We also, because the steeple itself was pulling apart in certain areas, we drilled all the way through it, and we put stainless steel ties in to basically cinch the steeple together to make sure that it didn't twist or anything. And so it was a complicated solution to just about anybody. But if you just kind of look at it and look at what all the different problems are and assess them correctly, you come out with a fabulous product that, the church loves and the people of Helena are in awe over, and you come out with a product that'll last, gosh, well over 100 years. But, it's kind of a painstaking process to make sure that it's done correctly, that you've got the right engineer, you've got the right scaffold company, you've got the right everything to make it all work. Even our crew, we had to organize it correctly because we were so busy that there wasn't one office that could take the whole job on. So we grabbed the roofing crew out of Cincinnati. So our tile roof guys from Cincinnati did the roof. And then we took our masons from our Columbus office and our masons from our Mid-Atlantic office. And the one set of masons did all the stone patch and the tuck pointing and everything. And the other set of masons did all the stainless steel screws and pulling everything together. And so it was like a whole team effort. And that's kind of one of the things I was saying, it's like the person behind the scenes that organized all this so that the engineering stamps were done on time, that the scaffold was erected properly and on time, and each crew, whether it be from Cincinnati, Columbus, or Mid-Atlantic office, arrived at the correct time so that everything went up just ideally. And it involved bringing our safety director out on numerous occasions to inspect and make sure that everybody's safe, because you've got scaffolding going up, 200 and I don't remember, 250, 75 feet, whatever it is. And sometimes, you've got to maybe move a piece of scaffold to access, some tuck pointing or whatever. Well, you've got to make sure that it's safe. You can't have a problem 275 feet up in the air. So
Yes.
you basically have somebody in the background being the maestro, going, okay, these guys are coming in now. These guys are coming in now. These guys are leaving. I got to bring in the safety director. I've got to do this. If you put everybody in place that is going to do their part of the project and be part of that great team, you come out with a fabulous project. But, you got to make sure that you're not cutting any corners. You got to make sure that every single person is doing what they're supposed to be doing.
You know what? Based on what you have told me, I felt that you are someone who likes to do what is the undoable. You are the one who does the undoable things. And when you are like that, I feel these awards and these achievements, they are not in your hand, but if you do right things, they eventually come. However, if you are a leader who likes to do these undoable things, you have to gather people around yourself who believe the same as well. And I feel that if you are someone and you are a leader who is open to challenges, it should drip down to the very bottom of your company, to the very last level. So everyone is working to achieve the same goal. How do you make sure that people are aligned with your vision of doing the undoable?
Well, that's an interesting thing. It's, Gary Howells, our president, he said, we're kind of unusual. Like we're kind of like the firemen, when people see a fire, they all want to, get out, run, get out of here. We're kind of like, oh, fire. It's like, let's run into the building and put out the fire. So many projects that are like crazy and difficult, everybody says, we don't want to do anything like that. We actually run towards like, oh, this is a really cool challenge. Okay, let's figure out how to do this. But that's the thing, that mentality doesn't need to drip all the way down. A lot of our guys just do something very basic. One guy, maybe he's just nailing the tile on. That's all he does. He doesn't even do any flashings. Another guy, all he does is maybe cut tile for the alley. Another guy, all he does is solder. So, that's kind of in the extreme. Most of our guys do many things, but if you just train them to do one or two or three things that they're good at, they can be great in an organization because they have done the job that's been asked of them, you know? So if everybody just does their job, they don't need to be rock stars at everything. They don't need to have some grandiose vision. They can just do their job and do it great. That's one thing we ask is like, if soldering is your job, do it great. If slate repair is your job, do it great. And we can find all kinds of people to do other parts of the job. One guy's going to run the job. One guy's going to maybe do a very difficult pan or a curved roof or something. Well, that's that guy's job. Some of your guys are extremely talented. They can do, the most wildest sheet metal that's really art. Some of our stuff is extremely artistic. It's like stuff that you could put in a museum. But by the same token, they don't have to run the job. They've got somebody that's, being the maestro and going, okay, these guys are coming in now. This. So if everybody's just doing their job, you come up with a great product.
You are right, actually. You're right about this. And I was listening, I heard from somewhere that you believe in this 3D mentality, that you look at things in 3D. I don't know if I'm right about this or not, but I heard maybe an interview of yours in which you said that you look a thing and you imagine it in a three dimensions. This is actually exactly the same what my mentor told me. He was the owner of the construction company that I worked in. Now, I know that in that particular interview, you were talking about this 3D thing in construction particularly. But I personally believe that this 3D thing works everywhere, and particularly when you trust someone as well. And when you are meeting someone, I feel that you are meeting a trinity of mind, body, and soul, because that person has a mind, has a body, and a soul as well. And nowadays, you can't just confide in everyone. You have to be responsible about whom you trust. So you have to see a person in 3D as well before you confide in them. How do you recognize at the level you are right now, the people you meet in your life? How do you recognize them?
Well, there's a lot of different ways. Number one, when you talk to them, you can see how well they communicate. So a person that communicates very freely and answers quickly, decisively, that's one way. Another way is just their products. Do they drive a dilapidated car? Are they all disheveled? Now, I've got to qualify that because I've had a project here at the house, and that's why I'm in our guest bedroom right now. I probably didn't get the best sleep, but in general, is the person a little disheveled? Is their car a little messy? Do they have things going on in their life all the time? Did somebody or various people do things to them where they've got, oh my gosh, this happened. Oh my gosh, that happened. When you talk to them and you explain something to them, do they pick it up right away? Or do they go, what do you mean? I don't get that. There's a lot of different signs that will tell you a lot about the person and how far they can move ahead, what they can eventually do. Are they driven? Is somebody content just, doing slate repairs for the rest of their life? They don't care about flashing a chimney. They don't care about doing any metal work. And, that's fine. They can fit into the company, but, you just have them do the slate repair. If they can do it great. That's your guy there. All these different things are indicators. Are they happy in life? Are they getting along in life? Do they get along with their family? Or do they go, my family's the worst? My brother this, my mom this, and let me tell you about my neighbors. My neighbors are even worse, and, those are all indicators. Do things happen to them all the time? So all kinds of things are indicators, but a communication is a huge thing. Does the person answer my questions? Do they answer them quickly? Do their answers make sense? Or do they just talk all the time, and they talk over you? Well, you know what? Or do you say something and they just sit there and go, So there's all kinds of different indicators, and those indicators will tell you a lot about a person. I guess that's the best answer to that.
I actually agree with you, because if someone is a victim, they will never take responsibility of their actions. Whenever you will tell them that this is your mistake, they will tell you, no, it wasn't my mistake. It happened because this happened, this happened, this happened, and this was the result of all these circumstances. So I agree with you on that. What made you learn this? Because you were right when you said that if someone has a messy car, to me personally, if someone isn't tidy and they just don't take care of themselves, I feel that if this person cannot take care of his body that God has blessed him with, how will he show up in relationships? So what made you learn this thing? Like, is there any event or anything that taught you this, that this is how you should judge people, or you should recognize people?
Well, it's just basically observation. If you look at people that can't handle the things in front of them, their car, their, even like their credit, they can't pay their bills. People who have difficulties in life, will have difficulties in their jobs, So you want to use that as a guide, Everybody's a little different. One person, they may be rock stars at work and then hell on wheels at home. You'll see that every once in a while. But in general, you just kind of observe. And one of the things that we do is we kind of do something called fast flow hiring. So we basically give almost anybody a chance. We get them in there and we just observe. And if they don't pick it up, they're gone. But we make every effort to make sure that they succeed. We train them. We clear up any words or misunderstandings they have. We really set good gradients so that they can achieve things, because a lot of times what happens to people is they bite off more than they can chew, and then they're overwhelmed and then they quit. So if you give everybody bite-sized things that they can achieve, they can do better and better and better. But you observe this, you watch for it, you make sure that if they're not being able to make the grade, you get rid of them quickly so that you don't waste all your time and efforts into somebody that isn't going to work out. But on the flip side, you do everything possible to make them succeed. So like I was saying, you give everything in little bite-sized small little increments that they can work with. And that bite size is different from one guy to the next. So sometimes you might have to scale that back for certain people. And as long as they get there, you're fine. Some guys, well, that little bite size is way too slow and they're bored. So you give them a bigger chunk right away, a bigger chunk, and see how much they can take. So there's no universal and that's one of the things that I try and stress, because I think a lot of people are looking for the easiest way out. What's the blanket rule for everything? Well, there's guides for everything, but you've got to be able to look and say, okay, well, this guy's gonna move a little faster than this guy. Whatever the case, everybody's gonna be a little different, whether it be your employees or a customer, somebody that you're selling to. I will say one thing very different to one customer than another. And why? Why is that everybody has a different belief or reality. And in talking to them, you want to have a basic reality, a basic understanding with that person. So if you talk to one person that's all very conservative, or a person that's on the other side, you want to talk in real, basic language and along their reality lines as best as possible. It doesn't mean being fake or lying through your teeth. It means talking with that reality. But by the same token, if somebody's really off the rails, I'll just end it. I've told people, I'm like, Well, I think you should probably call a different company because we're not the company for you. But thanks for calling us. I really appreciate the opportunity. Goodbye. You know, so whenever you see that customer that's trouble, you just get rid of them right away. You just don't work for them. If you see that in an employee, you don't hire them. You get rid of them right away. And there's a certain amount of society that's out there basically to harm and destroy. And you want all those guys off of your plate. And you
And what if
see
they are your
them.
personal relationships?
I'm sorry?
And what if they are your personal relationships, like your family and
Same
your
thing.
siblings?
Same thing. Or you keep them at arm's length. If you see them at family functions, hi, how are you? You keep everything very nice and pleasant, but you keep them at arm's length.
Do you know Tiger Woods?
No, I don't know Tiger Woods. I
Okay,
know of him, but
Tiger Woods is a legend in golf, and he is an American golf player, world class, I would say. And when you said that some people are great at work, but they are good with their family, it reminded me of Tiger Woods because I was reading about him last week, and I found that in 2009 he has this scandal. And if anybody who is watching this show, you can just search over the internet that who Tiger Woods is, and you will realize that how much it means to the golf industry and people who are a fan of golf. And when I read his story, I figured out that a lot of what happened because of his childhood traumas and the way his parents treated him. So he was very good at golf, but in his personal life, he was doing things that he shouldn't be doing in the first place. And when I look at you, I personally admire you so much in roofing, particularly. I feel that if you are the Tiger Woods of roofing as well, if we consider that part. But at the same time, I have never seen you going off track anywhere because I see your posts and they kind of give you a vibe of the person. I've never seen you going off track, and you have a great business. Still, you are poised in person as well. How do you ensure that you are always on the right path?
well, one of the main things I do is I try and do what's best for everybody. I don't look at it as to what do I gain out of this personally. And it's like a person really should try and help everybody around them. So I talk to people all the time. I mean, people ask me for advice all the time. And, it was funny because I've heard several people say, you should charge for your time. Charge for my time. It's like, yeah, you answer all these questions for all these, whether not just in roofing, but in other businesses, people have asked me about, various things. I said, you know what? It's like so many people have helped me along the way. And it's like, I think it's a duty and honor actually to help others, and I think that if you kind of make sure that you keep helping others along the way, that everything goes really great. If you're really just out for yourself, you've got to think about all those people that you basically hurt along the way to get yourself to the top, and how they're just sitting there behind every corner ready to take you down or stab you or, whatever. It's just not a good place to be. I think that if you go around and you help everybody as much as possible, whether it be your customers, your employees, your neighbor, your family members, or people you don't know, that it kind of just all goes around that, well, think of it this way. Let's say you just had a really bad day and you're angry, or let's say not you, somebody, they're angry and upset. And, when people are upset, sometimes they do, things are uncharacteristic, stupid things sometimes. And you come across this person and maybe, let's say they bump into you like very hostily and you push them. and then you get into a fight, right? That's one reaction. What if they bumped into you really hard intentionally and you say, hey, what's happening? And they tell you about, what's happened in their life. And you say, wow, I'm really sorry to hear that. Gosh, and maybe you give them some point of advice and you listen to them. Here's where a lot of people go off the rails. When a person has a problem, a lot of times they need to vent. They just need somebody to listen to them. And if you listen to them, like, you really acknowledge them and you kind of set them on the right path, well, now that person's happy, right? And maybe you compliment them. You say, hey, I know life is tough, but I tell you what, you sure know how to dress. You look great, whatever, some nice compliment. All of a sudden that person's day has changed, right? So let's say that person now bumps into somebody else and now isn't so angry. And maybe that person was angry and they remember that somebody listened to them and they said, what's happened? And then they listen to that person. If you treat everybody and handle people well, it expands all around you. So everybody that you meet and your circle should have that viewpoint. But if you do the opposite, where you're like, and you're pissed off and you piss people off around you, well, that's what you're going to have in your immediate vicinity and the people around you. So I think it's very wise to be nice, be courteous, and really try and help the people around you. If your neighbor needs, let's say he hurt his back and he needs somebody to help do his yard work. Well, you just do his yard work. It was funny because, one of my neighbors, he goes, hey, did you take all my trash cans up the driveway for me? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, well, I just noticed that they were just sitting there. He goes, yeah, I hurt my back. He goes, I'm so glad you did, because I was dreading going. He's got a big house on a really long driveway. He goes, I was really dreading moving that. And I said, oh, well, I just kind of assumed that something was going on. That's why I did that. But if you really treat everybody around you as much as possible with a good heart, good intentions, listen, help them, that's going to emanate all through everybody around you. And a lot of times it's got repercussions that you don't even know about. You help this person who helped this person that helped this person, and 4 people down the line, you never even hear that story, but it's helpful.
That's powerful. Yeah, you're right. Actually, it just creates a chain that just keeps going on, and you have to respond to people and really be curious about what they are going through instead of reacting to the situation. You're right. Have you ever felt anxious in your life? Anxious about something? Yeah.
Oh, all the time. You something happens and you're anxious about the outcome or whatnot. But here's the interesting thing. It's like anxiousness and worry and things like that. No matter how much you worry or how anxious you are about something, it's not going to change that. So what I've come to realize is that, okay, something's going to happen here, and no amount of worry or anxiousness is going to help that situation. So, that's one of the things that a person really has to understand is that, I say that in life, you're going to get thrown curveballs all the time. You can read or study as much as you want. Nothing quite happens in life like it does in a textbook. So every time you're thrown a curveball, you should just sit there, be calm, and acknowledge that that's what's occurred, and then figure out what's the best route from here to take. Because what happens to people is they get thrown a curveball, and that anxiousness or that upsettedness or whatever it is causes them to react in an irrational way. And whenever you do something irrational, it's got repercussions. And some of those repercussions can be very large. So the wisest thing to do is to realize that in life, you're going to have curveballs. One of your parents is going to die, whatever it is. Something's going to happen that's going to take you aback. And at that moment, don't do anything. Just sit back and observe and say, okay, this has happened. What's the best way to go about it? What's the best way to solve the situation? Because the usual response is an automatic something of anxiousness, being upset, being angry, whatever it is. But as hard as it sounds, it's like, just stop for a second, put the whole planet on pause, and just look at it and go, okay, so where do we go from here? What's the best solution to minimize any problems? And a lot of times you'll notice that if you do this, that curveball becomes a blessing in disguise. As bad as the pandemic was, in certain ways, it helped us because we switched gears. If you look at the recession, a whole huge downturn in the economy around 2008, 2009, in a way that helped us because we're able to go, oh my gosh, we've got a problem. And what's the best solution? And sometimes your solution takes you into a whole new realm. So this is a really screwed up situation, or this could potentially be a screwed up situation. How do I navigate this? And then once you come up with all the different ways to navigate it, then you go, okay, I'm going to pick solution C, and we're going to get out of this like smelling like a daisy. I think that's the best solution.
Maybe I need to learn that as well, because I don't know how to do nothing. And I believe most people don't know how to just do nothing, sit back and relax, because the world is moving constantly. It's just pushing you to do things all the time. You don't have time to just do nothing. You're right.
So what you're saying is correct. But let's say, like in this conversation, I just hit the pause button. So no matter what happens, unless it's an emergency, like, you've got your parachute isn't opening or whatever, and you're skydiving, but usually you've got time to analyze, because in the minute that you take to analyze something, nothing's going to change. But even if it were, skydiving, if you take a split second and go, okay, what do I do? Okay, there's a tree over there. I've got to try and guide myself to get over that tree, or, whatever. You just have to take that split second or that minute or that hour, depending on how large the cycle is that you're looking at. You take that time to gather your wits around you so that you can come up with a smart, logical solution rather than a quick, oh my God, because my God, that's gonna hurt you. A lot of times that's gonna hurt you because you've made the wrong, automatic, scared decision. Just sit back, go, okay, this is really messed up. This is what occurred. What are all the possible solutions? And just start coming up with solutions, even if they're outlandish, because you want to start thinking with solutions. Here's the issue. It's like, if you push positivity, you're going to get positivity. If you push negativity, it's kind of like the person that's always complaining. Well, he's getting more and more bad stuff because that's kind of his thing. He's locked on to that. But if he's just, just kind of thinks of what are the positive solutions, something positive, or at least semi-positive, will come up out of it, and he'll be able to navigate himself out of it. But that quick, upset, pissed off, angry, automatic response is probably going to nail them in a bad way.
Thank you so much for answering that, John. Let's just talk about money management for a while. I have learned so far, maybe you can correct me, that making money is easy, but keeping money is difficult. That's what people don't know, and that's what people need to learn eventually. What's the one money management lesson that you have learned so far that you would like to share or pass it over to the next generation of roofers or to overall business community?
Well, a person's got to be able to use set asides. And what I mean by that is they have to set aside a certain amount of their income, a percentage of their income, so that they can operate. Because a company or a person, they'll spend everything they have. And usually they'll spend that plus more because they'll take out a credit line, they'll get credit cards, and all of a sudden they're 5,000, 10,000, they're in debt. And now you can't actually really focus on your business because your attention is, I've got to make my payment to my credit cards, my credit line, my mortgage, my blah, 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 blah. So ideally, you don't operate with back bills. It's good to have the credit. And what you should do is always make sure that you have a credit line. So even if you don't need your credit line, this is a good piece of advice. Get a credit line, take the money out at least for like a month, get it close to max, put it back in or pay it back off. So even if you don't have or need a credit line, get a credit line and use it so that it's available to you, because you never know when you might need it. But if you set your income aside, it can be a small amount, but just set it aside every week, every month, whatever, and you don't use that, well, you'll never know that it's there, especially if you set it into a whole different account in a different bank. So let's say you bank at Chase. Well, when all your money comes in every Friday, if you take a certain percentage, you move it over to Bank of America or, wherever, a credit union, and you just sit it there. Well, the company's going to spend this amount. They don't have any more because the other money's gone. So they're going to try and use all that they have and more, but you keep it just to that amount. And then you've got two sources for a rainy day. Actually, three. You've got your set-asides, that's just accruing interest. You've got your credit line that should always be zero, but you're going to want to take money out because if you don't use it, they'll get rid of it. So you use it and you just put the money back, and then you have your line of credit with all of your companies that you use. If you kind of do that, you'll maintain your solvency. And even if you can't afford to do that, you do it anyway. So let's say, let's say you have $20,000 set aside in this reserve account, and you've got a creditor saying, hey, owe me $17,000. You don't take it out of the reserve account and pay him. You tell the creditor, I understand. Hey, I've got these things going on. I'll get you paid within, 22 days or, whatever it is. But let the money come into the company and pay that. Don't take it out of your reserves to pay that guy. Because a company will always spend everything it has and more. So you kind of have to do that wisely. And, another thing is I see guys that they want to do extraordinary things just to say they did it, whether it's buying big piece of equipment they don't need or going on some vacation, flying first class to wherever it is and staying in some 5-star hotel. If you can afford it, fine, no big deal. But there's no reason to do it if you can't pay your creditors. So
I learned a lot from your answers, John. And as we are heading towards the end of this, I want to ask you that I see you traveling a lot and you are constantly traveling from America to Europe and back to America and to other places as well. What keeps you so alive and energetic?
Well, that's the funny thing. It's like if a person sets out goals, and they set them, just on the other side of what they can achieve, and you just keep on swinging. You can really keep your drive and your energy really going. And the thing of it is to give you, whenever you get the successes and the wins, make sure you pat yourself on the back and acknowledge all the great things that you and or your team did. And it gives you life, so you see all the achievement that you've achieved, but you're also setting your goals for more, and that gives you a push to do the next thing, because I've had so many people ask me, it's like, I don't understand why you wouldn't just sell the company and retire. And I'm like, and do what, and lay back on a beach. And I'm like, that's the most boring existence I could ever imagine. It's like, I love having interesting games and interesting solutions to solve. And to me, that's life, making the balance between, working and having fun with, your family or friends, selling that next big job, selling the cool project that, maybe it's abroad, and or maybe you're going to some place that you've never been. Like I was saying, when we went to Istanbul, seeing the architecture and the building that's been achieved before us, and that it's still standing in the condition that it's in. It's like, it's mind boggling. And also seeing all the different cultures, I find it funny when I see so many people trying to divide people. This person's this race, this person's got and they're over there and we're over here. And, that's one of the cool things I actually really love about traveling, is to meet different cultures and see what they do and what they like to do, and experiencing things from their viewpoint. I remember my sister asking me that. She's like, it's like, I see, like, when you travel, a lot of times you go like these very obscure places that nobody's heard of, but they're just gorgeous. Like, how do you even know about these places? I said, well, that's one of the things. It's like, if you go to a place abroad, you really want to kind of immerse yourself into the culture and the people and really understand what makes them tick. Certainly you can go to all the touristy places and they're kind of fun, and, you see some of the, monuments or whatever, but going to these off the beaten path places that have some fabulous history to them and beauty and getting to understand the culture is a whole different thing. And you get to really experience a love of people and the different cultures. And, and that's one of the things that I've learned that's pretty universal. As you travel, people are people. It's like, I think it's funny how sometimes, especially like governments, pit cultures or races against each other. If you go to Turkey and meet these people that are Islamic or Muslim, great people. You go down to, I used to live in New Orleans. You go down in the deep South and the small little towns in Louisiana. Oh my gosh, they're the most wonderful people. And you have this in all these different cultures, but I think that through sometimes government and or the media, the TV, the news, they're always trying to divide people rather than just seeing the good in people. And that's one of the things I love about travel, is like, you actually get to meet the real people. And it's pretty hard to dislike people. Most people on planet Earth, very generous and just good people. Like I said, you have that small, slight percentage that they're out to get you, but, you just stay away from those people. But, it's such a honor to be able to travel and meet all these different cultures, and I really love it.
I actually agree with you that I feel that what you hold inside is what you reflect outside, and what you are, it's what you see the world as. And if you are happy and peaceful and you are generous, you see everyone like that. And speaking of media, I feel that that's only 1% of the people or the community that is just trying to cause chaos, and the media is just trying to highlight that community instead of showing all that 99% of people who are doing good in this planet. So speaking of this, I had to ask my last question, but I just have another one in my mind right now. Trump is here, and yeah, people are talking about, like, they are anxious about it. But some people, particularly in the construction industry, they are all positive about that. How do you feel, or how do you see that the future of roofing industry or construction industry is going to be in this era of Trump?
I don't actually know. And this is one of the reasons I've been part of the roofing thing in DC every year. Because I've really tried to convey that to every congressperson that I've met, that it's not just the roofing industry, but a lot of the trades and your farming industry depends on a lot of these types of people that are here illegally. One of the things that we do is we make sure that everybody that we have is here legally, and, we don't have that issue. But as a trade, that's vital. And one of the things that I tried to really convey is that we need to have a very strong border, ironclad strong border. And I feel like what we really need to do is vet all of the people that are here illegally, and basically take all of the people that are here illegally that are criminals and immediately deport them with no way of getting back in. I think that we need to take all the people that are actually gainfully employed here and give them some sort of path to either permanent residency and or citizenship. Because if you look at the United States is a melting pot of people from all over the world, whether it be from Germany or Israel or Russia or China or wherever. The only people that were here originally to the United States were the American Indians. And so the United States is a melting pot of all these other cultures that have immigrated here. And we need to basically help every single person that has helped the United States become the great country that it's become. So everybody that's gainfully employed needs to know that they've got some kind of route to stay here and make a difference. But every single person that's a criminal has to be gotten out of this country immediately, and they can't get back in. So, it's a long process, and it's going to take a bit. I don't know if that's what Trump's going to do. I hope so, because I don't think it's actually wise to do like some kind of blanket deportation of everybody that's here illegally. I think that you have a blanket deportation of all people that are here illegally that are criminals. That's a different thing. Or living off the system, that aren't gainfully employed or aren't trying to be. There's a difference there. If you're trying to be a contributive member of the country and of society, well, I think that there should be some avenue for that person that can do something of value. And, because I've got a number of European roofers that are very skilled in roofing and sheet metal that want to come and work for us, but they can't because they don't have the working visa. So I think that something has to be changed with all that, and I hope it works out that way, but I don't know how Trump is going to take all this.
You're actually right. I wasn't going to ask this straight, but I had a friend of mine, Kevin, when I told him that I'm going to interview you, he asked me to ask you this, that most of these roofers, they have these illegal immigrants, they are working on roofs. And if Trump, asks all of them to leave the country, people will have shortage of these masons and the industry would collapse. However, if someone is there and they are trying to work on their American dream, they want to achieve that, there should be a way to make it possible for them.
Absolutely. I mean, you can't fault a person for wanting to better their life. If they came here illegally, our border patrol failed in allowing them across. But if they're already here and they're working, well, my gosh, we should do something to support them, to allow them to continue to work here. Because otherwise, here's what's happening. A lot of those guys are getting paid under the table somehow. So they're not paying taxes. They're not paying Social Security. They're probably being underpaid because the company's probably trying to take advantage of them, knowing that they're not legal. So you've got all this wasted money. And what I mean by wasted is that person isn't getting the money they deserve because the company's probably paying them less than they deserve. The government isn't getting their taxes off that production. The company isn't getting what they should from that person because that person feels taken advantage of. Let me put it to you this way. If you're somebody's employee and you're really happy to be there and you like the company and you're always acknowledged for your work, you're going to want to do the best you can for that company. So your production level is very high. But if you're an illegal immigrant that's being underpaid by some company, you're going to think, well, I'm just going to half-ass it because I'm being underpaid anyway. And he's got a bad attitude, and his attitude's also affecting the other people in the company. So the production level is actually not very high. So you're losing on the person, the company, and the government all in one fell swoop. And it's a difficult thing. A lot of people don't see that. But I think that, you're here, you're producing. My gosh, who is the United States? All those people, even the pilgrims that came over, they came for a better opportunity, just like these other people from wherever in the country. Hey, if they're producing here in the country, let's help them. Let's give them residency. Let's give them a path to citizenship. Let's make them feel welcome and wanted in this country. Their production levels will go out the roof because the companies will now pay them a legitimate salary. The companies will benefit because their production levels will go higher. The person individually will feel better because, a person, their morale goes up based on how much they produce, and, that's something that's kind of interesting. People have asked me how I keep my production up and sleep so little and travel so much. It's like, because I'm very productive. And the more productive you are, the better your morale is. And you want to do the next thing. You want to do the next thing. And you're excited. You're excited about, tackling the next project and hiring the next person and checking out the next country or, whatever it is. So that person's morale goes way up. And then the country is benefiting from all these taxes. It's a win-win-win all the way around. So, I hope that that's how Trump and the new administration sees this. But I don't know. If I were to be able to talk to Trump, that's what I'd tell him. And I think that he would see it in a nanosecond. But, we'll see how it goes.
Perfect. So my last question to you would be, you have achieved so much in your life. People dream of all these things, all these awards and all these recognitions and all these legacy and projects and contributions that you have done to the roofing industry. Now, when you sit down and when you have your me time or in your empty moments, when you have the conversation with yourself, what do you say to yourself when you look into the mirror or in those empty moments of yours when no one's around and you just have to talk with yourself? How does the conversation flow goes?
That's one thing I try not to do. I try not to talk to myself But
Uh-huh.
what I do is I take time for myself. Like I smoke cigars, for instance. A cigar takes a little while to smoke. Sometimes, as busy as I am, I'll just go out on the deck and I'll smoke a cigar, or I'll hop halfway in the pool and I'll be like, up to my neck in water, and I'll smoke a cigar and just kind of relax and the accomplishments, because a person has to be able to acknowledge himself for what he's achieved, because it gives them basically a sense of accomplishment and more drive for the next thing. And it also, for me, it lets me relax just sitting there and hanging out. Yeah, that's about it.
Do you have any advice or any signing of notes for the people who will be?
Okay. I think that basically just some of the things that I've said throughout this interview, basically, you know, like exchange, trying to always give more than is expected. And it's kind of like, if you took your car in to get it tuned up and it came back, it's tuned up and it's spotless, it's cleaned inside and out, and they waxed it, you're like, oh my gosh, So if you always deliver more than expected, you're going to get a lot more in return. And if you treat people really well and you really try and listen to people and help people, no matter who it is, I mean, it could be a stranger on the street, it could be a person you're sitting next to in an airplane. If you just try and help people in general, a lot of things will come back to you, and the area around you will be nice and calm. If you go about life in a not so great way, things around you will be in disarray. And so basically, like I said, sometimes it's hard because, especially with just how the planet is, the world is today, a person gets thrown curveballs all the time. You got to look at the curveball and go, okay, stop. What's the best solution? Okay, we're going to implement that solution. I'm not going to jump the gun and bite somebody's head off. You might bite it off later, but depending on what they did. But I mean, you've got to be able to not flinch, because you live on this planet, and you're gonna be thrown curveballs a lot of the times, and you just can't react and flinch automatically. You got to be able to just look at it. So I just think that those are the things that I do. I mean, as I was saying before, there's a lot of different ways to set up a company or to live life or whatever. These things are some of the things that I found successful. Maybe somebody would find them successful also, and maybe others have differing viewpoints where they've used other things that work well for them. And even if they're contradictory, I mean, if they work for you, it works.
Definitely. And I feel that everyone has their own set of philosophies and beliefs that they have made, and they live their life around that. And I got to learn so much from you. Thank you so much for taking your time and being on the show here, John. It was great having you. And I hope the audience will learn so much from your experiences as well. You will be an inspiration for sure. Thank you so much for your time.